was and why is my picture so small? But that's okay because my live face will be back on shortly.
Okay.
But one of the things we talked about was, and I got to get my face back on before we get deep into this.
Hmm.
But one of the things that we talked about was the people getting into this for the wrong reasons. Um,
Right. For the money, you can say it. They just get in it for
for
the
the money.
money, and then they have jacked up programs where the veterans aren't feeling worthwhile. They're not
Nope, that's right.
supporting them in any type of services. The I've seen it nasty and janky and not. They just don't care.
And
Just for the
especially in
money.
places like where I am, and I'm in the Houston, Texas area.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna say this again in a few minutes. Okay, getting my phone together to come back on camera because
Hmm.
we had some issue with digital resources in this area. um, so this is the only week that things will be this way. Apologies to everyone. Beginning next week, all of these issues will be fully rectified by next week's broadcast.
Good.
All right, and I'm just but yeah, so I say Houston is hustle city. It
Mm.
really is. And which means it's the we're gonna I'll talk about the bad aspects of it first. The bad aspect of it is, hey, look, you know what? People are just it's whatever's the next big money grab. All of the proclaimed small business owners, aspiring entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs, people with no, people who call themselves entrepreneurs just because they don't have a job.
Yeah.
They're going after the next big money grab, but they don't actually care about important parameters such as workforce development and leadership and making sure that their people are well taken care of.
Yeah.
One thing, if you listen to a lot of billionaires talk, right, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
tie this into our vets. Um, they talk about they talk about you can love money, you actually
Mhm.
can, because most billionaires do, which is why they're attracted so easily.
Yeah.
But the quickest way to be a successful millionaire with a lasting empire is provide a lot of value for a lot of people. And so if I'm putting, if I have four people in one room, the first thing I start talking about is, well, you know what? I heard that they got these veterans programs and we got these veterans homes. And, if I can just, I heard that I could have up to three or four veterans in one room and get paid this amount per veteran. Well, I'll tell you one thing. So my question to them is, four veterans, four grown. Let's put this in. Let's drive this home in layman's terms.
Make it
Let's not
make
even use the.
sense.
Let's not even use the word veteran.
Mhm.
Four grown humans living in one room.
Yeah.
Four adult humans living in one room. And some of these people thinking this way. Some of these people are church pastors thinking this way.
Yeah. Just pile them in.
Just pile them
Rack.
in because so we can rack up.
Hmm. Yeah.
You
That's not
know,
very humane, especially for someone coming out of such trauma situations. You're thinking about, it's another thing if it's a whole family, and that it's the family matters, because you have a lot of cultures living, stacked up like that. But these are veterans who have trauma,
hmm
veterans who, like myself, military sexual trauma and domestic violence. What I need to look like sleeping in a room with three more women, and I'm going
right,
through my stuff and she's going through hers, and our traumas is the third woman, and my trauma don't mix well, so
right.
just it's too much.
It is. It is.
It's too much. So let me see, I have another question for you.
Yes,
Let's talk
ma'am.
let's talk about how we can help, and what we do in our consulting practices to assist viable business owners who want to get into the veterans contracting space where it relates to housing,
Hmm.
real
Yes.
housing. So let me ask you this,
Hmm.
because the ones that we do assist, yeah, they can look at the money because they're going to be doing a program quite well because I'm going to be helping setting that program up to make sure
That's
it's
right.
done quite well.
Or
What role?
we
Yes. Well, you right. You all
other way,
talking
other
about
way. Nope. Other way. Nope. You got to do it the other way. You got to point the other way.
for real.
Oh,
What?
they
So it's
switched it up on us.
mirrored. Oh my goodness. Okay. So
Yep.
so what role does federal procurement play in ensuring long-term success for veterans housing projects or
Well,
programs?
well, I have an answer. So basically, federal procurement. Let's start here, and I'm going to make this one very simple so
Mhm.
a first grader can understand. All right,
Okay,
y'all.
okay.
All right. So basically, when we say federal procurement, right, that's basically just how the government buys things. All right.
Mhm.
For example, they buy real estate, they buy housing, they buy services. So when we secure a long-term lease or housing contract through this process, it means steady, guaranteed funding. So that stability is what allows us to build and maintain quality housing for veterans,
Yes.
not just for a year or two, but long term.
Yes.
So it turns a good idea into a sustainable solution.
Mm.
So when we say what role does federal procurement play in ensuring long-term success for veteran housing? Well,
Mhm.
that's the answer. The government's going to come in. They're buying. They're going to buy out that facility, and they're buying the services that's associated with people like vet mentors and Sky Project Management who come together to build a program, okay, that builds services that actually, as we said a few minutes ago, and I can't do that provide basically when we provide a lot of value for a lot of people basically. So
Yes.
if so once they see that we're actually providing a lot of value for a lot of veterans, then they're going to come, they look at the facility and they say, you know what, this could also qualify for sole source opportunities.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
So but however, in order to get to that point, it is essential that you have an Yvette Jones Swanson come and set up the program through your more traditional criteria,
Mhm.
which is your various SSVF routes. Then once you're able to show the government that this facility is performing at a certain standard with regard to homeless veterans SSVF programs. They're meeting evaluation criteria. They're meeting those measurables and milestones as it relates to compliance when incidentals happen.
Mhm.
Now we can put all that stuff together in meeting notes with a proposal, and we can actually send that proposal to certain federal acquisition teams, your contracting teams,
Yes.
which is usually run by that agency's acquisition department. And then they could typically put in place what's called a notice of intent to sole source.
So let me ask you this. So now you just mentioned that it could be for years that these contracts can be maintained on this program within this
Hmm.
facility and multiple facilities because you've done so well. Now you can do more. So let me ask you this. And this is how long have you known about the START Corporation in Louisiana?
Oh my goodness, Start Corporation. Wow, man. As a matter of fact, it's so crazy. When you bring up Start Corporation, I immediately think about the names of the people and everything. Man, I never forget my first time. I've known about the Start Corporation since 2013 or
Okay,
2014.
so hold on.
2014.
So hold on.
Yeah.
So 2014, and this is 2025, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how many years is that? That's one. So that's 11 years.
Yep. Going
So this
strong.
going strong, right? So the Start Corporation for this fiscal year for the funding that was trickled down to all of these SSVF organizations, and the Start Corporation is one of them. And this
Mm-hmm.
is year 11. Since you stated
Yes.
you've known about them since 2014, they could have been, was it before 2014, or that's when you found out about
I'm gonna tell you. Look, they were so robust in
them?
2014.
Okay, so they could be
This,
older.
yeah, and here's why I say that because when I went to them, they already
Mhm.
started talking about different communities that they had their hands tied into. Like in other words, they had certain city blocks
Mhm.
in the ninth ward of New Orleans, in the seventh ward of New Orleans, in the third ward of New Orleans,
Yeah. Wow.
downtown New Orleans.
Mhm.
That they had pretty much already entered into agreements with those landlords
Mhm.
to
So
where those land. Hmm.
hold on, let me tell you this, because people want to hear how successful programs run, and
Hmm.
how the contracts and procurement money side of it look. So
Hmm.
we just give it a loose 11 years. For this fiscal year, from 24 to 25, they've already received $1,807,402. This is New
Wow.
Orleans, Jefferson Parish,
Hmm.
Louisiana Balance of States, Continuum of Care, COC.
Hmm.
Um, so that's where they are. New Orleans, Jefferson Parish, Louisiana Balance of State. So 1,000,008 for a
Hmm.
successful program. So when people tell me that I want to house veterans, whoop de doo, you can do a hadash all day long. That's not a program for one house here or there. You want to do a program, then do a program. Get a facility, and we set up the program in the facility so that these veterans can thrive. We don't want veterans to go to a facility and it becomes their hospice, and
That's
the way
right.
they leave is in a body bag. We don't want
Oh my
facilities
goodness.
like that.
Oh my
So
goodness.
do
Yeah.
right, do something for the veterans to allow us a better chance in life. That's what happened to Derek and I. We found the resources to help us thrive in life, and that's what we're
Hmm.
here to help, entrepreneurs, hopefully veteran entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
go back and or like the pastor we just saw, the deacon, the bishop who was just on before, he said
Hmm.
he's a military brat, so he gets it. So he would be an ideal person to for us to consult and create a program and funding for,
Hmm. That's right.
but not some old,
That's right.
you want to
Absolutely.
towel up the place with
No.
strangers who don't know each other, who have PTSD and all the other psychosis.
Yeah, I have just kind of going back to a lot of people I've met since I've been in the Houston area.
Mhm.
I've met countless people who just jump on this thing. Oh yeah, we can do a veteran home, and I'm gonna tell you what's interesting is I have not heard since I've been in the Houston area, I've heard at least 10 different people talk about it, and none of those people are veterans. And they're always talking about how much money they can get from it. So so I mean that's why you have companies like Sky Acquisitions that's now forming partnerships, national partnerships with private equity, major private equity firms and hedge funds to take
Yes.
you out of business
Yes. Because we could do it
because
bigger and better.
we can do it bigger and better. because we want you to be able to do it. We just want you to do it with some integrity. But
Yeah.
if you're not going to do it just with the right way, understand that we now have the knowledge. We now have the knowledge and the resources to create entities that will replace you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great thing to get into if you have the capacity. Yes, it's a great way to build your wealth portfolio. It is a great because what better way to build wealth than providing value for America's veterans? That's a
Mhm.
great way to build. It's a win-win situation. You help veterans, and God turns around and helps you prosper in the process of you becoming a part of that mentors, from homelessness to home ownership program.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Because
know.
one thing we don't want to do is just get veterans in a program and they're there forever. The program is is a bilateral program where you're moving up, you're moving forward, you're moving out. And the steps to get there is within the program that is created for your particular facility,
That's right.
which is in alignment for government contracts and procurement.
hmm Yep. Yep. And here, you know what that made me think of too. One
Mhm.
another question that came in. It was a question that they asked about me, right? About
Mhm.
Sky, towards Sky, and it says, "What's the biggest misconception?" Okay, I think it was like a third question that came in, but they basically asked. They said, "So, Derek, what's the biggest misconception that private developers have when trying to do business with the government?" Now, look, let's go ahead and make that a blanket statement. Let's not just make that for private developers. We're going to answer this question for private developers, for commercial property owners who already have properties, investors, and people who's aspiring to get a real estate portfolio so that they can operate programs like this to provide value for our veterans, right? So,
Yes.
going on once again, what's the biggest misconception private developers have and commercial real estate owners have about doing business with the government? Well, here's an answer. Most private developers think that working with the government is impossibly slow or full of red tape. But the truth is, it can be only if you don't know the process. But
Mhm.
that's where Sky and Vet Mentors come in because we've been doing both sides. We've
Mhm.
awarded contracts from inside the government, from the perspective of Vet Mentors being a national veterans advocate, and we've helped companies win them from the outside.
Yes.
So, when you understand the rules, the government becomes one of the most reliable tenants and easiest partners you will ever have. It's just about having the right people to guide and mentor you through that process. Eventually, it becomes muscle memory, and there's no red tape at all because you now have that relationship going. That's why you need your companies such as your Vet Mentors and Sky Acquisitions just to introduce you to how it's done. So the biggest misconception is that it's always slow and with red tape. Well, yeah, when you first walk into a government facility on a government installation, um, trying to do, I think you went blank, Yvette, but your screen went black. Not sure if you're still there.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, cool. Okay,
I
good.
won't
But
do that
but
again.
Oh, okay. But so basically, so when they ask that question, what's the biggest misconception that developers have when trying to do business with the government? Well, I mean, they think that working with the government is going to be impossibly slow or full of red tape, but
Mhm.
that's not necessarily so. The only reason it seems that way is because many times, whenever you come to do business with the government, they want to understand what perspective you're coming from, what program you're interested in, what's your angle, and what's your motive. They just want they just want to be comfortable in that you intend on doing this in a way that's compliant and with
Mhm.
integrity.
Yeah, let's go down this list of the types of companies that you just described. And I'm sure from this list of SSVF organizations who are receiving millions of dollars every year, you've heard of United Way,
hmm
Volunteers of America, Catholic Charities, will, your screen went black. I'm just going to keep naming these industries that are known in everyday. United States Veterans Initiative, here's one. Mental Health America of Los Angeles, they service veterans. But there are some common names amongst this list. Again, Volunteers of America, they're all over the
Hmm.
place. You've got Jewish Family and Christian Services. That was another organization here in Chicago that I
Oh
served
wow.
their homeless veterans from. Yes. So all of the what you just described of having robust programs, integrity, and everything else you said about the companies being servicing veterans for all these years, these are names that have been around
Hmm.
for
That's right.
years. And these are companies that the federal government feels their programs are worthwhile year after year after year funding. And that's what we do. We help you get your program set up, get your
Hmm.
funding, and hey, you're serving veterans, getting them
Yep.
from homelessness to home ownership because that's part of the program.
That's right.
We've got several that we can create for all types of everything that Derek just described in a business. So look, I gotta go to choir rehearsal. It's 6:30. I'm singing in the choir.
That's right. That's
Praise
right.
God. Yeah, I
Well,
praise God.
I'm also a worship musician, so I understand. So
Yes,
that like, got to get that done. Yes.
yes. Isn't that phenomenal how everything is just aligning?
Hmm.
So, well, thank and we had somebody on here watching. We can come back and look at what they were saying. But thank you all for watching. I'm Yvette Jones
Thank you.
Swanson, National Veterans Homeless Housing Advocate and Consultant, and
Derek Green, procurement professional, and for the government contracting and procurement aspect.
we'll see y'all next week. Bye for now.
Talk soon.
All
Bye.
right.